It's really a reframe on how to look at life and to realize that life is just a series of moments and we get to choose how to live each one. The key is just not to live in the sadness constantly
Yeah.
and be able to use some tools to be able to bring yourself out and look at life as really as the gift that it is and the gift that was given to me by my parents, and to be able to enjoy it and get the most out of it while I'm.
Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, this is my custom to welcome our guests because I know in my eyes they're coming with a couple of things I deem very expensive, and they're here to spend some of this precious commodity with us. First, their time. 24 hours has been offered to every man and every woman. Truly, if you understand the value of time, it'll change your life. And so I invite those that are out there that have not yet understand the value of time to begin to study time and see what it does to you. The other is the journey. The journey is a powerful creator. It created Elizabeth, and it has deposited a couple of things in her that we want access to. What are those things? Wisdom, knowledge, insights, and so forth. Why? Because we want to become better human spirits while we're here on this planet. Elizabeth, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It is an honor. I usually like tossing this question to everyone that shows up, if you will, on the podcast, and I'll toss it to you because it is something I love to do. And that question is, I mentioned to you that we have the twofold journey, the independent and the interdependent aspect of our journey. And my question is to you is this: how do you serve mankind?
Well, that's a great question, and I hope I am serving mankind. I recently published a book called Choose Your Moments, capital MOM for mom, how the sudden loss of my mother taught me how to live. And so I'm hoping that that is my service to mankind, because unfortunately, in losing my mom, I learned that often the things we think matter don't. All that matters are the moments, now being called moments. Still the same word, but capital MOM in honor of my
Yeah.
mom. And that life is a series of moments and we get to choose how to live them. So it's interesting, in the opening, you talked about the value of time. And, you know, the intention of my book is to redefine the word moments from a point in time into a tool that you can use to enrich your life. So I understand that, you know, time is something that we are always concerned about and always talking about. But my idea is not to emphasize the scarcity of time, but actually the immensity of time and resources that we have to live a better life.
Yeah. There's time. It doesn't matter when you start. Just take the time, as they say, and just begin. Take that first step. When I was in ashram, I remember them talking about begin where you are, and all the magic will be there because you have
Exactly.
everything you need.
There's a quote in the book that says, when you take a step, the path appears. So sometimes it is just taking that first action
Yeah.
for things to start to unfold.
That is a law, the law of momentum. And once we activate that law, it'll produce fruit. And so one of our customs, we have a ton of customs here, is to go back, if you will, to the beginnings of our beginnings, I call it. And that is the first location that we hang out for a few years, because we go through the process of we enter into all of these different stations, if you will, where programmers are there to program us. And the first is the family. In this space, we are going to learn about communication skills. We're going to learn about trauma in some places. We also learn some beautiful things there within the family. What was your family unit like?
Well, it's funny when you say communication skills, the first thing that came into my mind was my dad's language. So he used a lot of curse words. So, you know, as little kids, you always wonder, where are they learning these curse words? Well, we learned them from him. So that makes me laugh a lot when you say that. But yeah, I mean, obviously the formative years are extremely important. They say between the ages of 0 and 7 is really when you have a lot of subconscious programming. And I have been very fortunate that I had a loving family. My mother was amazing. I know I just painted the picture of my dad as this cursing maniac, but he was supportive in his way. But my mom was extremely loving and supportive. So I grew up believing that I could be, do, or have anything. I talk about her being really my first law of attraction teacher without even knowing it, without me knowing it or even her knowing it, because she would always say, think happy thoughts, no matter what the issue was or whatever the problem was that we may have been dealing with. She would say, oh, just think of happy thoughts. So already, you know, at a very young age, I was learning to use my mind and positive thinking to get me through life.
Let me ask you a question. With all of that foundation, which is a powerful foundation that you were offered there, how did that affect your relationship with others?
My relationship with others, I think it affected it in a good way because I always saw or I tried to at least,
Yeah.
to see the positive or see the possibilities. So, I have my same best friends that I've had for, I don't want to say the year because then you can figure out how old I am, but a long time. We'll put it that way. So, but I think it gave me a great outlook on other people, and I was quick to notice when others didn't see the same things I saw. For example,
Yeah.
if they didn't see the possibilities, if they didn't see the positive aspect, if they were not as hopeful. So I think it set me up in a good way, actually, because I was very, very open to new things, new people, new
Uh-huh.
ways of thinking, new languages, which ended me up. Now I'm living in Spain, new cultures and things like that. So I think it put me in a good mindset
Yeah.
to be able to explore the world.
I can see from listening to you why you picked your field of studies, but I want to hear from you. Um, because again, I'm tracking the progress by which we are moving through life until we quote unquote become an adult. And as I said, in each one of those spaces, we encounter these programmers that are telling us certain things, but you were lucky in the sense that privilege is a better word to had such a wise mother and the foundation that they offered you as you're moving through and how it impact your life. Now, the question is, again, I know I can understand now why, but I want to hear from you. Why did you pick your field of study and the college? What was the incidents that led up to that choice that says this is it where I want to be?
I've always been curious, I would say. So I was always curious about people, their lives, their thoughts, their perspectives, and which led me to psychology. I mean, my joke was always, "Oh, my family's crazy, so I'm going to become a psychologist and help them." And that really wasn't the case. But I think it was the curiosity of the human experience, and I was also privileged that I was able to go to the university. So that was something that interests me to learn more about. With my father being a lawyer, obviously he was a lot more practical and didn't necessarily believe in everything that psychology
Yeah.
had to say. So I had the big contrast there. My mom, of course, was extremely supportive and interested. It wasn't. I don't want to say a new field of study where there not it was not as much as it is now.
Yeah.
Now we have, not only psychologists and therapists and psychiatrists, but we have lots of different coaches who specialize in different areas. So it's turned into a different type of business and or profession. But yes, I've always been extremely curious about the human experience. And I thought that was the best way to learn. So I started out in the university with a psychology degree. Then later I got a coaching certification for executive coaching, and then went on to study different courses in neuroscience and positive psychology.
That's awesome. Let me in school. I mean, you found a place that you really enjoy, and you felt that this is home in a way. All that data that you were bringing into your life and the information, because you get a lot of information when you're there. How did you assimilate those information? Was it bearing fruit, were you still just going along with it, as they say? In college, we some of us are not focused, if you will, but some of us there, we have learned and we've gotten some insights as to us, and we are beginning to make a serious approach, if you will, to the data. How did that data impact your life as a young woman who's been in the framework, if you will, about psychology and the mind for a long time? You started with mom,
Yes, it's true. I mean, obviously, whatever you study will hopefully have an impact on you, as well as the environment that you're in. And I think the trick, it probably in any profession, but let's say psychology would be, or a therapist or a coach would be, to practice what you preach, really. So the first step is to integrate it into yourself, into your own life. I obviously was, constantly analyzing my family, friends, and things like that for my own practice, which sometimes happens with people. But I think to integrate it and start to take some of the practices into your own life that you learn, to see that if there is success or change or what kind of outcome you may have, depending on what it is that that you're doing. It is also the foundation of my book, Choose Your Moments, because I think that it's a a lesson on how we can get
Mhm.
the most out of our lives now. So there's a quote in the book that says, leverage what you've learned. And so, which I like because I'm trying to leverage what I have learned,
Yeah.
throughout my life and obviously in my studies, and be able to share it with other people. I tried to break it down in a simple way. I tell the story of how I learned that life is a series of moments and we get to choose how to live them. And hopefully anybody who's suffered any kind of loss or change or transition would feel accompanied by that story. And then it's full of quotes, and each quote has an explanation using
Yeah.
the word moment, so you can see how you can implement it into your daily life. That's why I say leverage what you've learned. I'm doing that throughout the book and using different quotes to be able to help people in different areas of their life, little short, fast coaching exercises that you can engage in each day.
I was reading all your stuff, and your life, just fascinated by the process and the progress by which you took the journey, if you will, and how you went into the mindset training with athletes and so forth. Talk to me about that, because you are engaging with athletes, and these men and women are individuals that are at the peak of their performance. They understand and they are putting into practice all the things that you are studying in your books and so forth. You're getting to see it on a daily basis from them, breaking through all of the different mind that they have, these obstacles in the mind and the body and the communication that they're there. You're witnessing this stuff. As you're witnessing this stuff, what truths began to resonate in you, because you're looking at this stuff, man, a long
Yeah, no,
time.
it was also a privilege to be able to have a front row seat to a competitive athlete at that level in the
Yeah,
Olympics and World Championships. And it's interesting. Obviously, I learned a lot from them about focus.
yeah,
They were very singular focused and took great care of themselves as well, which was part of their job. And sometimes we don't realize in our everyday life that that's actually part of our job too, to make sure that we get enough rest, that we eat well, that we're exercising, stretching, whatever it may be. So, they take their bodies obviously very seriously and
hmm,
understand the connection between the mind and the body, and creating a positive atmosphere, around them. So, but what I would also tell people is really to, pay attention to what makes you feel good. I got interested
yeah,
in figure skating really as a figure skating fan. So I was watching figure skating competitions and shows, and I really loved it. And I felt such a pull towards that, so much interest and excitement. And because I followed that, I followed it into a career, first by writing for a figure skating magazine, and then later doing public relations, and then full on athlete representation. And I ended that part of the career with tours and show production. So, and it's because I followed my instinct, or I followed what was bringing me joy or making me
yeah,
happy. So, there's a quote in the book that says, passion is energy, not matter. Because sometimes, when we're looking in our careers or even starting a career, we think that something else is going to
yeah,
bring us that happiness, that it's a destination or a place to go, or that, outside of ourselves is what's responsible for lighting us up. But actually, if we know what lights us up, what ignites us, what makes us feel good, and we follow that, we can bring that
yeah.
fulfillment to whatever it is we're doing. And I have always been doing that. That's how I ended up in figure skating. That's how I ended up in Spain, and that's how I ended up being an author. In one of the saddest moments of my life, I was able to find some joy, well, at that moment it was relief, but it was, starting with relief, and now the moment's message brings me joy.
Yeah, you guys, I hope you heard that, guys. The beauty of these things, you can rewind, go and learn, and always check in with self. You got to do what's, what again, Elizabeth, we talked about, I mentioned it briefly about the subconscious being. He has data that you guys need to pay attention to, and in those quiet moments it'll pop up, and you can investigate it. If you're concerned about it, just investigate it and see where it leads you. And sometimes most times it'll lead you exactly where you need it to be. And as you said, you learn from athletes about focus. And I always tell people, the thing about getting into sports is that it allows the mind, any kind of arts, even music, it doesn't matter, any kind of arts and that you can get into because it allows you to become familiar with the usage of your imagination focus. These are tools that you will utilize later on in your journey, especially when those hard times knock at your door and
Well,
you're
I also
familiar.
think that athletes have I always say they work the fundamentals. So if you're a dancer or a figure skater, you're a figure skater, you're working the edges, right? They have patterns that they do. I'm not a tennis player, but I
Yeah.
imagine tennis players are working on their swing and things like that. So, athletes, they are working the fundamentals
Yep.
always. And that's something that we can do in in everyday life as well, whether it's
Yes.
meditation, like I said, positive thinking, sleeping well, eating well, taking care of yourself. But they really find a way to connect with themselves, mind, body, and spirit, to be able to deliver that incredible performance, or to be able to, win that game, or
Yeah.
whatever the sport they're playing. And I think being connected to yourself is extremely important, and looking inside, yeah, as we were talking about before with, passion is energy, not matter. Look inside for what is there, not necessarily outside. And they
Correct.
just very much develop the skill of obviously they're quite disciplined.
Yeah.
That's extremely important, but and they develop that skill between their mind and body. So even when they're tired or frustrated or whatever it may be, they can rely on their body to do the work for them, because the muscle has
Hmm.
been trained so much. They call it muscle memory, that it knows how to land that jump or swing that bat or whatever it may be that they're doing. So I think that is a practice that we can take into our everyday lives as well, is just to try to work our fundamentals and be able to set ourselves up for personal and professional success, which for me starts with moments.
Yeah.
Ask yourself throughout the day, do I want to spend my moments doing whatever it is you're doing? Do I want to spend my moments talking about this issue, thinking about this problem, arguing with this person? Do I want to spend my moments in this job, in this relationship,
Yeah.
whatever it may be? And then if the answer is no, you have the opportunity to make another choice and to enrich the moments of your.
That is such a powerful advice, such powerful advice, guys. I hope, again, Elizabeth, I always invite the audience to learn to transition when they're listening, to begin to hear, because when one hears, I believe it engages the subconscious being. The natural ear is designed to listen, but when that subconscious being hears the truth of that conversation, he will lodge it into his being and utilize it to change his life and begin to, you know, move through whatever situation they are. You guys, beautiful stuff she's talking about. So let's go to mom. Mom is this important individual as you're moving through your life. And again, he's revisiting these spaces and you're learning from each aspect. And I love the fact, as I said, that when I was reading your stuff and listening to all the podcasts and stuff, I was like, wow, here's a woman who had, in my mind and my understanding, you have been in um, the mind space, if you will, for a long time from since a little girl, basically just moving through life. And every position that you took was about, again, dealing with the mind, the subconscious mind and the power of the mind and so forth. And I was absolutely just amazed by your synchronicity of your life. So here you are. Talk to us about mom and what she was in your life, because you have to put on that smile, and a happy face. And how did her life and her happy face impact you as a young woman? And again, you're in your adult phase. When talk to us about that dark day, and from there, because then you are now embarking in a new phase of life that brought you to the book.
Yes, I mean, it's nobody wants to be in this phase of life when you lose your parents. So that obviously is a tough one. But I mean, it's amazing, to answer your question about what my mother was like. I mean, I say in the book, there's not there couldn't be enough books written, words spoken to describe how amazing I want to say still is, was, and a really incredible person. I mean, she always wanted to be a mother. That's what she
Yeah.
said, and it was quite obvious is and how she raised us, how she cared for us, and what an incredible support she always was. Yes, she was a happy, positive person, luckily, and fun. So that was great. And it was a great force to, to have accompany me through
Yeah.
through my life and to support me in all my development and all my endeavors, whether she understood them or not. That's the key there. Sometimes she would be like, okay, whatever. All right. If it makes you happy, honey, would be something that she would say.
Yeah.
So, and then obviously losing her was, for me, and for all of us who lose to somebody, it's tragic and it was unexpected. So in the book, I take the reader through, a 24-hour journey that was a little over 2 years ago when I'm home in the US at Christmas and my mom dies suddenly up until the moment that
Yeah.
I'm alone with her the night before the funeral. And that is when I kind of got the download of nothing matters. All the
Yeah.
things that we think matter don't. And all that matters are the moments. And life is a
Yes.
series of moments, and you get to choose how to live them. And that really impacted me because I felt that my mother gave me the answer of
Yeah.
how I will handle grief. And it's to choose your moments. Keep choosing those moments every day. And it impacted me so much. Obviously, I wanted to write about it and to share it with others. And I find it amazing that mothers protect us so much as well from the moment that they're pregnant and taking care of us as babies and throughout our lives. And I'm still blown away, for lack of a better word, that how my mother took care of me even in her death. Of this, this is how you will handle this. This is how you will go on, because it won't be obviously the first one. My dad just died a few months ago. So it really gave me the tools on how to handle these kind of losses. Now, for me, it's a natural loss. We are all going to lose our parents at some point. For other people, they suffer losses that we wouldn't consider natural, especially if it's a
Yeah.
child. But a friend, a sister, a brother, I mean, it can be anything. And I think it can apply for obviously people going through any change or transition. It can be people leaving relationships or divorcing, changing jobs, changing houses. It can even be loss of physical attributes. I mean, people
Yeah.
who end up with handicaps or whatever, changes in health status. So it's really a reframe on how to look at life and to realize that life is just a series of moments and we get to choose how to live each one. Now, that's not to say that you're not going to suffer difficult times, because obviously we live in, a polarity world where there's good, there's bad, there's hot, there's cold. There's going to be happiness and there's going to be sadness. So the key is just not to live in the sadness constantly
Yeah.
and be able to use some tools to be able to bring yourself out and look at life as really as the gift that it is, and the gift that was given to me by my parents, and to be able to enjoy it and get the most out of it while I'm still here.
That is, what a beautiful gift, and how your perspective from that situation and how it gave birth to this new individual, new insight, new process of living. But I know that that sounds beautiful, which it is. But before it got all that beautiful and you in your explanation, it was a big mess. So how did you manage? And because it is a process that brings you to the understanding of the moments and with the mom and that aspect, that's a journey in itself that brings you there. And then you began to see the clearness of it and how it impacts your life. Walk with us as that began, because there are many of those that have lost someone. As you're talking about, many of those some probably listening now, and maybe a family member did just lost someone. Maybe some crisis has arisen in someone's life that is hearing us. Walk with them and bring some light to them as they are in that space right there in the onset of it, if you will, and what to expect as they're moving through, because we all have to deal with grief and all the different
Yeah, I mean,
process.
grief is horrible. It's a horrible experience, obviously, and unfortunately, it is part of life. Death
Yeah.
is part of life. That's the first line of the book, which is it's inevitable that death is a part of life. But what if it was death itself that taught you how to live? And that's exactly what happened to me. So, anybody that's going through grief, obviously, I would encourage them to feel the feelings. There's no secret pill. There's no way out.
Yeah.
except to actually go through what you're going to go through. I don't want to say that grief has its gifts per se, but I think every experience brings you to another place, right? There's an expression that they have in Spanish, and I guess the best translation would be safe journey back to the sun. The reason, I take that as in such a profound way, because I believe through whatever experience, in my case, it's grief, and anybody listening who's going through grief or any troubles, that when you do get on the other side, when you do go through it, you are brighter
Yeah.
because like the sun, because you have lived this experience and you've hopefully gained some insight or from some knowledge from it. But I would encourage people to feel the pain, because it's going to be there no matter what you try to do to avoid it. So
Yeah.
it's a matter of feeling the pain and just processing it, breathe through it, send it all into your stomach area and stomach crunch it out, let that energy process through. But the tears, the people who you have lost deserve your tears, and you yourself deserve your tears. It's an expression. So express that, it's expression of energy as well, and emotion. So definitely express those tears, and realize that life is a series of moments. So what do you want to do next? And I was very fortunate in the sense that the answer from my mom came quickly, obviously, because
Yeah.
I saw her right after she died. However, that doesn't mean that the grief journey didn't last. When this last Christmas, so now we're in May, but this last Christmas, my dad went into the hospital the day after, and he was there for several weeks, and we learned that he wasn't going to recover. So of course I panicked. There's another grief right there, another loss that is coming. The idea of it being with both my parents gone, and how can I live, and
Yeah.
it all started all over again, and those pangs of grief that you get. And
Yeah.
I really honestly stopped myself and said, I'm not going to waste these moments now
Yeah.
worrying about future moments. And I just wrote a book that says life is a series of moments and we get to choose how to live them.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take the message from my book and decide, how am I going to live these last moments with my dad? And I'm so happy I did, because I changed in that moment.
Yeah.
I keep using the word, but it's true. In that moment, I changed, and I decorated the room that he was in. We had family and friends coming in and out to see him. Then one day, my friend was there with me, and I walked her out to the hospital. I walked her to the parking, and I'm
Yeah.
in the parking lot, and I look up at the hospital, and I see the room that my dad was in because of all the decorations, which one it was. As I was looking, the American flag was blowing outside of his window. And I thought, oh,
Yeah.
how beautiful, because my great grandfather, who my dad is named for, and his picture was inside the room. I included his picture in the room as well. I, decorated the room with pictures of family and friends, some that are here, were still here, and others that weren't. And my great grandfather, who had traveled from Italy to the US back in the late 1800s. So the future Sevos could have a better life. And
Yeah.
now here we are 100 years later, and his grandson, who is named for him, is dying behind with the American flag blowing outside of his window. And my dad lived like a king. That was our joke in our family. So he had achieved his goal. And
Yeah.
I thought to myself, how beautiful.
Yeah.
And I walked back into the hospital, and my dad was gone. So
Wow.
I have that as my memory now, instead of my dad in a hospital bed.
Yeah. Wow.
So, and I have that because I decided to choose my moments and to make sure that I was present. So I would suggest people to choose their moments, of
Yeah.
course, but also just to try their best to be present, because there are a lot of gifts in the present moment that sometimes we don't see because of the chatter or whatever that is happening. And there's nothing like grief that will stop you dead in your tracks.
Yeah. Well, what a beautiful story, Elizabeth, and such insights that you have. I hope that people are really paying attention as you are releasing your wisdom and your insights. I remember in corporate America, they would train us and tell us, when we have a problem, take small bites, because when it's pretty big and it can be overwhelming. And they would say, just break it down and approach it that way. What a powerful way to break it down, to, take a moment. That is the micro approach to the whole thing is to pick that moment, whatever it is, and start to change right there and make the adjustment from moment to moment.
Well, we all have moments.
Yeah.
That is the thing. We all have those moments. Everybody has the same amount of moments per day. We don't know how long each one of us will have moments in our lifetime, but we all have moments. So it's something that that we can build from,
Yeah.
knowing if I have a bad moment now, I've got another one coming, and another one coming, and another one coming.
Yeah.
And again, unfortunately, anybody suffering grief, they are going to have bad moments. But just to know that there will be better ones in the future if they choose to have
Yeah.
better ones. There's a quote in the book that says, "Where you are is a temporary place." And, that one has helped me a lot in my grief, that I will not feel as bad as I do today or in
Yeah.
every moment. And, and
If,
that all of this,
yeah.
will be temporary, and the time will come where I will remember both my parents with smiles and laughter.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that I won't remember them also with tears. But that's the beauty of love.
Yeah. If they choose, it's the key. And that is from default, disconnecting from the default program and making a different choice. And so I used to say to people and my kids when we were growing up, I said, be very mindful about your decisions, breathe, take that pause. Yeah, because I told them that once you've made that decision, all that remains is the consequences, whether it's good or bad. And so always take that breath, that moment, and look into get answers from the inside. I would tell them the subconscious man, the soul has the answers. Just take that breath, and you will be amazed of how quickly that answer will come. So let me
Yeah,
ask.
there's a quote in the book that says the difference between reacting and responding is just a few seconds.
Yeah,
And so if we take those few seconds, and
yeah,
in the story with my dad, I reacted
yeah.
obviously at first, but I took those seconds and decided to respond to this
Yes.
situation.
Yeah, I that's a beautiful lesson. And I still, my sons, they'll talk to me about it because I would sit them down and talk about it. And I say to them, a child not respond, reacts. I said, if you you see a kid, he'll react. He'll be screaming and everything, but a son will respond. And I said, when
Nice.
you respond, you are tapping into wisdom, understanding. You're pulling from a different source. And when you are a child and you're reacting, you're pulling from a different source. You'll scream, kick, yell, and all the different things. And I would tell them, I said, learn to be sons. Those boys must have thought I was nuts. So here you are. I want to ask you this question because, and I know what you're going to say in some aspects of it, and because you've been saying it, but there's nothing wrong with asking again because repetition is how we learn, as you said. This is how we learn and put things in practice. Elizabeth, you have a mic. It's plugged into every single man and woman on this planet. What would you say?
I have a microphone that's plugged
Mm-hmm.
into
And it's plugged into every human being on
Love
this
that.
planet. What would you say to us all?
Choose your moments, plain and simple. It's so simple yet so profound. It can be life-changing, but it's true.
Yeah.
So yes, that is the message. I want to spread the moments message with that microphone that is connected to every person on the planet and remind them to choose their moments. And if they don't know how, they can read the book.
Yeah, we're going to provide the links, guys, for you guys to get to her. And I always encourage my listeners to get into the spaces of these folks that are presenting to you. They're coming with tremendous amount of wisdom. They've gone through some dark spaces, and housed within the walls of that cover are wisdom, knowledge, insight that will help you and assist you and move you through from your situation, your pain, your current stagnation where you're not sure, whatever. You go into those books because that's where a lot of my answers were books that I read. I remember reading a Napoleon Hill book when I was going through a breakup, emotional breakup. My thoughts all over the place. And I remember reading We Are Godlike in this fashion when we were able to control our thoughts. And I was like, boom, it hit me like like a
Well, yeah, I
stone.
mean that's an incredible lesson right there.
Yeah,
And you know, if I had that microphone, obviously yes, I would say choose your moments, but I think it's an action that's easier for people. They feel more empowered with that. I mean, I can say a million things like I think it's important to follow your intuition, and some people could say, well, I don't know if it's intuition or fear or what, or was that the right voice, and blah blah blah. Think positive. Yeah, I'm trying, but you know, this happened and that happened. And choose your moments is something that you have the chance to do it over and over and over and over
yeah,
again. And it's actionable, it's easy, and I think it empowers people. So I would love to take that microphone and give a whole speech for a long time. But I think the easiest thing and hopefully the most impactful for the listeners would be choose your moments because
yeah.
they can do it. Anybody can do it, no matter what situation you're in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm going to leave it there, guys. You know, choose your moments, and that's life. Life is just a series of moments that one is afforded the opportunity to make decisions, and those decisions will bear fruit as to based on your what you did with your moment. So be mindful of your moments and change the trajectory of your life. And we will provide all the links for you guys to get to Elizabeth. Get the books, buy it, give it to your siblings, give it to friends. I always tell people buy books and as a group and read it and then have meetings, talk about how did it impact you? What did you see? What did you see? What did I see? And you have lunches and dinners and talk about it. I'm telling you, it'll change your life. And so you guys get together and form a nice book club. And
Yes, and then call me. I'll
again,
come.
we're gonna put that so you guys can bring her in live and have that conversation at that book club. You know, so you can hey, we have the author here and pick her brain because that's what a servant does. They afford themselves to you so that you can have access. And because what excites her is the fact that you will pick your moment and change your life. And I'm telling you, it's like a drug. When she hears that, I'm sure it'll turn her on and get her excited as to her way to help and assist you. Elizabeth, thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment. This has been fun. I've been fascinated about your life, reading and listening to your stuff and getting a chance
Oh,
to
thank you.
hear you talk about it. I am totally still impressed. So thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Thank you.
And enjoy Spain, by the way.
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Threads of Enlightenment with Ken Primus. Hopefully, you're now feeling more empowered to overcome the challenges in your life, whatever they may be. Share that inspiration with others by telling them about this podcast, rating it, and of course, remember to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. For more connection, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram by searching for Threads of Enlightenment. Until next time, stay enlightened.